What happens after death? Science took a look. Imagine your heart is stopped. Not in a poetic way, not in a dramatic movie way, where someone clutches their chest beside a conveniently placed violin. Actually stopped. The room is bright. Machines are beeping. Doctors are working fast. Your body is lying there, doing the least impressive thing a body can do, which is nothing. No breathing, no pulse, no polite contribution to the conversation. And then, somehow, you come back. Days later, or weeks later, you tell people something strange. You remember things. You remember the room. You remember voices. You remember looking down at your own body. You remember a light, or a tunnel, or a feeling of peace so enormous that ordinary life suddenly seems like a badly organized waiting room. This is where science finds itself in a deeply uncomfortable position, because for thousands of years, the question of what happens after death belonged mostly to religion, philosophy, poetry, and people with candles. But then doctors began doing something very annoying. They started bringing people back, and some of those people came back with stories. So scientists had to ask the question properly. Not, is there a heaven? Not, does the soul float away like a confused balloon? But a smaller, sharper, more scientific question. What is happening in the brain when a person is close to death? And the answer is not simple, which is rude, but very typical of the brain. The first surprise is that death is not always a neat little switch. We like to imagine it as one clean moment, alive, dead, like turning off a lamp. But the body is not a lamp. It is more like a city during a blackout. Some areas go dark immediately. Some flicker. Emergency systems kick in. A few lights keep glowing for reasons nobody planned. When the heart stops, blood stops carrying oxygen to the brain. Within seconds, normal consciousness usually disappears. That part is clear. But the brain does not always become instantly silent. It can go through a strange shutdown process. Cells struggle, signals change, chemical balances wobble. The whole system begins doing the biological equivalent of a computer saving 12 documents while the battery is on 1%. And somewhere in that dying flicker, people sometimes report near-death experiences. Near-death experiences, or NDEs, are not new. People have described them for centuries. Floating above the body, moving through darkness, seeing bright light, meeting dead relatives, feeling overwhelming peace, watching scenes from their own lives. Sometimes it sounds beautiful. Sometimes it sounds terrifying. Sometimes it sounds suspiciously like the brain hired a film director at the last minute. For a long time, many scientists dismissed these stories as hallucinations. And honestly, that was not a foolish idea. A brain under extreme stress is not exactly a calm accountant. Oxygen is dropping. Carbon dioxide may be rising. Blood flow is failing. Chemistry is changing. The brain is being pushed into conditions it was not designed to review calmly with a clipboard. So yes, strange experiences would be expected. But then came the awkward part. The stories were often surprisingly similar. Different people, different countries, different cultures, different beliefs. Yet again and again, the same themes appeared. A tunnel, a light, a feeling of leaving the body, a life review, a sense of peace. That does not prove an afterlife. Science does not get to leap from many people saw light to, therefore, eternity has excellent lighting. But it does suggest something real may be happening inside the brain during the process of dying. Real does not mean supernatural. A dream is real as an experience. Pain is real as an experience. A memory is real as an experience. The question is what causes it. One explanation is that the dying brain may create an intense final burst of experience as its normal systems collapse. Think of your brain as a theater. All your life it has been running the show. Lighting, sound, memory, emotion, body position, time, identity. The tiny stage manager inside your skull has been keeping everything just organized enough for you to believe you are a sensible person. Then death approaches, kicks open the door, and starts unplugging things. The lights flicker, the sound system squeals, the scenery comes loose. And for a few moments, the brain may produce something extraordinary. Not because it is leaving the body, but because the machinery that creates reality is under extreme pressure. That may explain the tunnel. Vision is heavily processed by the brain. When blood flow and oxygen change, visual systems can behave strangely. The edges of vision may darken. The center may remain brighter. To the person experiencing it, that can feel like moving through a tunnel toward light. That may explain the peace. The brain has chemical systems for pain, fear, calm, and reward. In crisis, those systems can shift dramatically. A body under extreme threat may release chemicals that alter fear and pain. The result could be a feeling of calm so powerful it seems otherworldly, which, to be fair, is exactly how a brain would describe its own chemistry if it had no access to the laboratory report. That may explain the life review. Your brain is not a filing cabinet. It is more like a wildly emotional librarian who remembers your 7th birthday, your worst haircut, and the one embarrassing thing you said in 2009. Under extreme stress, memory systems may become unusually active. Some people describe scenes from their lives appearing rapidly and vividly, not like reading a biography, more like being hit in the face with your entire personal documentary. And then there are out-of-body experiences. These are some of the strangest reports. People say they looked down at their own body. They saw doctors working. They heard conversations. They watched the room from above. This sounds like the sort of thing that makes scientists quietly put down their coffee. But there are possible brain-based explanations. Your sense of being inside your body is something the brain constructs. It uses vision, touch, balance, memory, and body signals to create the feeling that you are located behind your eyes. Usually this works beautifully. You wake up and find yourself inside yourself, which is convenient. But under stress, that system can break. The brain can misplace the self. It can create the sensation of floating, leaving the body, or seeing from another position. This can even happen in some neurological conditions and laboratory illusions. So an out-of-body experience does not automatically prove the mind left the body. It may show that the brain's body map system can malfunction in a very convincing way. And yet, the mystery does not disappear, because some reports include details people claim they could not have known. A conversation, a medical action, a sound, a scene in the room. These cases are debated heavily. Some may be memory errors. Some may be guesses. Some may be details learned later and woven into the story without the person realizing it. Human memory is not a security camera. It is more like a gossiping artist with access to glue. But some cases remain difficult. Not impossible, difficult. And difficult is where science gets interested. This is why researchers began studying cardiac arrest more carefully. Cardiac arrest is not a fainting spell. It is when the heart stops pumping effectively. The person loses consciousness. Doctors must act quickly. In hospitals, some researchers have tried to study what survivors remember from these events. One major research effort, called AWARE, looked at awareness during resuscitation. Later work continued investigating whether people could report experiences from periods when they appeared unconscious. The results are fascinating, but they must be handled carefully. Some survivors report vivid memories. Some studies have found signs of brain activity during resuscitation in certain patients. But this does not prove consciousness survives death. It does not prove the soul leaves the body. It does not prove heaven. It proves something more modest, and in some ways more interesting. The border between life, death, brain activity, and experience may be messier than we once thought. Science hates mess, then quietly makes a career out of it. The deeper problem is consciousness itself. Before we can confidently answer what happens to consciousness after death, we have to answer a slightly embarrassing question. What is consciousness? We know a lot about the brain. We know neurons communicate using electrical and chemical signals. We know different brain regions support memory, emotion, language, vision, movement, and attention. We can scan brains, stimulate brains, operate on brains, argue about brains at conferences until everyone needs coffee. But we still do not fully understand why brain activity becomes experience. Why does a lump of living tissue produce the feeling of being you? Why does matter wake up and look at itself in the mirror? Why is there an inner world at all? That is the hard problem hiding underneath the death question. If consciousness is completely produced by the brain, then when the brain permanently stops, consciousness likely ends. That is the view many scientists consider most consistent with current evidence. But near-death experiences remain important because they show how unusual consciousness can become when the brain is pushed to the edge. They are not proof of another world. They are proof that this world, especially the one inside your skull, is far stranger than it looks. And maybe that is enough, because the scientific answer to what happens after we die is not as satisfying as people want. The honest answer is this. We know what happens to the body. The heart stops, blood flow ends, cells lose oxygen, organs fail. The brain eventually suffers irreversible damage. We know people brought back from the edge can report powerful experiences. We know the dying brain may not shut down as instantly or neatly as once imagined. We know consciousness remains one of the hardest mysteries in science, but we do not know that awareness continues after irreversible death. No careful experiment has proven that. No study has settled it. No machine has measured a soul packing a small suitcase and leaving through the ceiling. At the same time, science has not finished the story. It has only begun asking better questions. That is the strange middle ground. Not certainty, not fantasy, not easy comfort. Just a mystery with hospital lights, brainwaves, human memories, and a question old enough to make civilization itself look young. Maybe near-death experiences are the brain's final fireworks. Maybe they are the mind's emergency story machine. Maybe they are biology turning chaos into meaning. Or maybe they point to something about consciousness that we still do not understand. The sensible answer is to be careful. The interesting answer is to keep looking. Because one day, every one of us becomes the experiment, which is a bit inconvenient, because by then, it is very hard to publish the results. For now, the best evidence says that death is not a doorway science has fully mapped. It is a border. And at that border, the brain may do something extraordinary. Not necessarily supernatural, not necessarily eternal, but extraordinary. The same organ that worries about bills, forgets passwords, invents excuses, and occasionally walks into a room with no idea why it came there, may also create one final, astonishing experience at the edge of life. And that may be the most human part of all. Even at the end, the brain tells a story. If you enjoyed this strange little journey, subscribe and help us reach 1 million curious minds. There are many more weird facts hiding in plain sight, and we intend to bother all of them.